clarity and integrity and a strong spine to go to Afghanistan and say we are going to build a dam on the Kabul River, जो मेन रिवर है इंडस को फीड कर रहा है. आपके यहाँ से पानी नहीं हो. आप इंडस वाटर ट्रीटी को लेके वैली के कश्मीरी जो हैं जिहादी उनको लड़वा दें पाकिस्तान से. उसके तुम्हारा पानी लेता है पाकिस्तान, क्या उनसे लड़ो. और ये सारा वाटर जो आपका हरियाणा और पंजाब का झगड़ा चल रहा है, यानी कैन यू इमेजिन that Haryana and Punjab are having a fight over water and India is giving that water to Pakistan? यानी किस टाइप का मुल्क है हिंदुस्तान? Sometimes I can't understand. 5-6 लाख तो पहुंच जाए ना पार्लियामेंट, इंडस वाटर ट्रीटी खत्म करो. आपको हकीम ने कहा है कि आप अपना पानी भेज दें उनको फ्री में. अगर आप नेहरू साहब की ये लाइन थी कि ये पानी की ट्रीटी हो ताकि चीन और हिंदुस्तान की जंग में पाकिस्तान चीन की तरफ जब हो, अगर टेंशन होती है तो यहां से अटैक ना करे. जो 62 में इट प्रूव टू बी राइट बिकॉज पाकिस्तान डिडंट अटैक इंडिया इन 1962. कर देता तो बहुत परेशानी होती हिंदुस्तान के लिए. लेकिन आपका 1947 का कश्मीर पे अटैक से लेके आज तक कोई ऐसा उर्दू बोलने वाला पंजाबी लीडर या आपके जो महाजिर यहां से गए यूपी से और कराची सिंध पे कब्जा करके बैठ गए, उन यही दो हैं लोग पाकिस्तानी, बाकी कोई पाकिस्तानी नहीं है. Has anyone ever said that Muhammad Ali Jinnah was wrong, or that India, we are Indians, or that Indus is our mother? ये कह रहे हैं हिंदुस्तान तबाह करो और आप उन्हें पानी दे रहे हैं. यानी लॉटरी लगी हुई लोगों की, खाए जा रहे मुफ्त का. बंद करें हुक्का पानी. जिस दिन थ्रेट भी किया ये सुधर जाएंगे. मुझे ठेके पे दे दे, मैं ठीक कर दूंगा. नहीं, सीरियसली.
This is a question from Mayuri. Mayuri, yeah?
सब भाग गए सवाल करने के बाद.
सवाल तो थोड़ा टेढ़ा सा ही है.
हाँ, पूछे.
Why do you not come back to your ancestors' dharma? The word used is dharma.
हाँ, my ancestors' dharma includes every dharma, भैया. यहाँ तो हर कोई आया है इस धर्म में, वरना आपका धर्म ही नहीं हो अगर मुझे वापस आना पड़े. समझे? कहाँ है बहन? कहाँ गई भाई?
बहन चली गई. क्वेश्चन पूछ के डर के मारे चली
नहीं. कहिए क्या? देखिए, आपका धर्म है कि इसमें हर कोई आ सकता है. आपने को 50 करोड़ आपके खुदा हैं, कितने हैं? 5 पे सौदा कर लेते हैं. 33 करना. अच्छा, उसमें हमने एक डाल दिया तो यार ऐसी क्या प्रॉब्लम हो गई है. बल्कि गुजरात में एक देवता है जिसका नाम अल्लाह है. ये मैंने रिसर्च कर लिया सर.
अच्छा.
हाँ, तो हम तो एक और ऐड कर रहे हैं, उसके अंदर क्या फर्क पड़ता है. हम तो भगवान को भी मानते हैं, सबको हम मंदिर ले जाए हम तो वहाँ. बल्कि मंदिरों के अंदर बैठने का ज्यादा अच्छा इंतजाम है मस्जिदों से, क्योंकि मैं बीबी के साथ बैठ सकता हूँ. मस्जिद में तो जूती चोरी हो जाती है और बीवी का पता ही नहीं कहा है. ठीक कह रहा हूँ सर.
Now, I think we almost coming to the end of the session, but we still have some more time.
Okay.
So, with the permission of the panel, we can throw it open to all the panelists. We can ask questions to all the panelists. There is one for Dr. Frawley. There is one question for Dr. Frawley, which says that you think the caste is an invention of the British in the context of the Aryan invasion theory. Who asked this question, please? Yes, please.
Well, starting in the Vedic period, there's no caste. There's the Brahman, the Kshatriya, and the people. In Purusha Sukta, we have this mob. Okay. Can you hear? Okay. In the Rig Veda, there's only 3 divisions of society: the Brahman, the Kshatriya, and the Vish, or the people. In Purusha Sukta, we have 4, but what we see is that in the Vedic system, unity of Purusha is the predominant factor, Purusha is the entire universe. So we have an organic division of society into different functions, just as the human body has different functions. So this is what we see in the ancient times. Over history, throughout the world, we've had various social divisions where birth is a very important factor. We had this also, you didn't have public education, you had diversity of professions based upon family of birth, all of that. But what we regard as the more rigidity of the caste system appears to be something of more recent centuries. And if we go back to the Vedic idea, in the Vedic idea, there's no division of people by color. That's just totally a wrong interpretation of the text. In Europe also, you had the priests, the aristocracy, the common people as merchants and servants. So we had these old models. So India was based upon a deeper sense of human unity, humanity being one family. But this caste problem has come up at a social level. It is more a jati problem, a problem of birth, than it is of varna. In fact, few people actually practice their specific varnas today. But the social system has to change with the movement of the time, perhaps because of foreign rule, some inertia came in, but there needs to be a new sense of national unity, understanding of the Paramatma, and creating a society that's one in essence and has a differentiation of function that's based upon the realistic needs and roles and occupations in the world today.
There's one more question. This is again to Dr. David Frawley. Rishi Sen. Rishi Sen? Okay. What changes are needed in the present education system for India to become a real soft power?
Yes. First of all, you need a good universal system of education in India. And this idea of supporting, of creating and subsidizing minority institutions is causing division in the country. And the education should teach Dharma. It should teach an authentic history of India. As Tufel has said, who we are, what our values are, what our past has been, what our movement is towards the future. And there should also be a recognition of the values and the teachers who inspired the Indian independence movement. Why is it that Indian students are not taught much about Swami Vivekananda and almost nothing about Sri Aurobindo? So there needs to be these types of changes, a more nation affirmative education, but it also has to be very modern, looking towards the future, creating of proper jobs and roles that will move into the 21st century. Would you like to say something?
No.
I think without a public education system and universal enrollment, nothing is possible. Because as I see India today, it is now controlled by private expensive schools and their graduates and their fraternities. The parents are basically vying with each other to get their kids into the best possible, not just the best possible education, but the reputation that they are in their social circles where the kid is going. There is not a single politician whose child goes to a government school. There is no person with the courage to say that I will send my son or daughter to a public education system. And that is India's main challenge. What is taught can always be tinkered with, but when a country starts and says that our education system will be delineated according to economics and class, then you've shattered the goal of ever reaching a place where an Indian will respect another Indian based on what he or she is contributing rather than where he or she was born.
Great. The next question is to Tariq Fateh. Would you like to go back to Pakistan if the regime changes?
No, I'll go back to Pakistan once Pakistan breaks. Pakistan is unworthy of respect or anyone according it respect, and I feel embarrassed when I see Indians lining up to visit there, but when you ask them why don't you visit Bangladesh, they have that look on their face, you expect me to go to Bangladesh? And somewhere deep inside the Indian psyche is that great white men come roaring down the Khyber Pass like Imran Khan to capture our hearts and minds. And it is shocking at how the intelligentsia is completely in control, is completely controlled by the propaganda of Islamofascism, done in a way that befools them completely. I've never seen a visitor who has gone to Karachi, even in Mumbai, where a large Sindhi population lives, who feel that Karachi, nobody speaks Sindhi, and they think it's okay, you know, at least we speak it in some suburb of Bombay. So there has been not just a destruction of the Indian idea through the syllabus of schools, it is also a sense of arrogance and dare I say servitude that sees the Western neighbor of India as having some sort of a power over the rest of India. It comes from the days of Taimur and Babur, because you still celebrate Babur as your king, isn't it? What sort of a people celebrate a person who comes and plunders your land and says, these are ugly people, I don't want to be buried here, and goes out and your syllabus and your people say that Babur was an Indian king. And it's like Hitler was a Polish president.
That's next question follows into it. Hirendra Kaushik. Last question was by Rohit Verma. Rohit Verma? Yes, that is your question done. The next question simply goes into it with Babur. What's your reaction to the issue of Babri Masjid and Ram Mandir? Hirendra Kaushik. Yeah.
Well, these are two separate matters. But to begin with, Babur had no business building a mosque. A mosque is never built on land that is stolen. And last I heard there were no municipality papers of transfer of ownership of land from some Indian to an invader from Uzbekistan. So let's do away with that Babri mosque issue. Now you come back to the issue of Ram temple. Why shouldn't there be a Ram temple? What is the issue? Who is it that is objecting to it? I really like to come face to face with people who say, no, it should not be built. I haven't run into them, so I don't know their argument. I've seen everything that Professor Subramaniam Swamy has done, and I hope his case in the Supreme Court succeeds. I would like to see it there. I really don't feel comfortable when in the name of my faith, temples are destroyed and mosques are built over it. I think it's a sacrilege. I think not just over here. The Umayyad Mosque in Damascus was built over St. John's Church. The Istanbul sacrilege of the St. Justin, Eastern Orthodox symbol of Christianity was turned into Hagia Sophia by putting 4 minarets over there. There are countless examples of this sort of an outrage done in the name of Islam. And there is resulting fear in many populations of what a crazy Muslim would do if we'd speak the truth. I can't even understand why people are not taking up issues with other temples. Banaras as an example, where Mathura is an example. I would expect Muslims to come forward and take down that sacrilege. I think Muslims who step forward and take up the mullahs should be given the highest award of this country to take back and say thank you to the people who gave Prophet Muhammad's children refuge. By the way, this is the only country during the life of Prophet Muhammad that a Hindu Raja in Kerala gave his land to build the first mosque in the world. This is before Mecca became Muslim. That mosque existed. And not a single Indian mullah has ever gone there to give ziyarat. He will go to Palestine, but he will never go to Cochin because the men over there are dark and short. They look for tall Imran Khans where they have to go and worship. So the first mosque of Islam has never been visited by any Mughal, any Sultan, any dignitary, any prime minister, any president of the 56 Islamic nations on earth. Only it was Narendra Modi who took a gold model of this and slapped it into the face of the Saudi king and said, "Eh, rakho tusi apne naal."
That, friends, brings us to the end of the session. And Ruchi will just say a short present a short vote of thanks. And after that,